Thank you, Mr. Loi. May I also invite Ms. Regina Quack back on stage now for the Q&A session? I'm sure at this point of time, many of you might have some questions for our two speakers. Ms. Quack and Mr. Loi will now be taking questions from the floor. So if you have any questions, you may use the microphones along the aisles. Or if you prefer to write it down, you may jot down the question and who it is for in the papers provided in the seminar kit and hand it to any of the ASME Secretariat staff who is walking around. Okay, to start the ball rolling, maybe I will start with a question for Regina. What are the lessons that brand owners could learn from the Creative and Apple saga?
I think from the Creative and Apple saga, you learn that IP rights are very, very important and very valuable. And so it's also important not to underestimate what you've got. I mean, if Creative had not adequately protected that patent, then 100 million settlement would never have happened. And sometimes you do not know what the future will bring. If you feel you have something valuable, then act quickly to protect it, because it could reap a great deal of money in future.
Okay, thank you. For Adrian, with franchises in both local and regional countries, how would Ya Kun ensure that the quality of the food remains the same throughout?
I'm so happy that Regina next to me can ask one question, then she can answer for you. Okay, regarding how to get standard locally and overseas, I think these are quite basic questions. We need to train and retrain, whether locally or overseas. We have a systematic training program, and of course, doing audit, we can do internal audit and also do external audits. Like for local, we have a very good team to go around, doing mystery shopper and even, train some of our local corporate-owned or even franchise outlet. For overseas, we do have, we send periodically our staff to go there to train and retrain them. And also we have some friends or associates overseas. We ask them to do some spot check, once in a while to make sure that everything is on tip-top conditions. So this is how we do our check and balance. That's in the sense that we, do audit internally and externally. Thanks.
Thank you. Then how would Ya Kun then cater the taste of Kaya Toast to suit the palates of overseas market?
I beg your pardon?
How would you cater the taste of the Kaya Toast to suit the different people from the overseas market?
Okay. Okay. For Kaya itself, we export our Kaya. We don't have, they have no choice, but one of our agreements is that they must get our Kaya from Singapore. So we had to export to the country. So they use exactly the same Kaya that we produce locally in Singapore. So there's no choice but to get from us.
Okay. Thank you. Regina, do you have any legal advice to give startups in Singapore? For startups in Singapore, basically.
Okay, well, for startups, it really depends on what kind of industry. Many startups I know would start off with an internet kind of presence. If you're on the internet, be careful where copyrights are concerned, because just because it's out there and it seems to be available to everybody doesn't mean there are no copyright protection. A lot of startups that have encountered this, where you take extracts from other people's website and you receive a cease and desist letter from a lawyer, a couple of weeks after. So be careful depending on what you take. Many of them will be protected by copyrights. If you are, depending on the industry, if you are looking at say the fashion industry or the food and beverage industry, it's a crowded one, and you know that there are brands out there already, very well-known brands. Be careful if you're choosing a brand. Look at what you need to say, what you need to communicate, what kind of promises, what Adrian has mentioned, what kind of promise you're communicating, where you're positioning. Then choose a brand that will do that, but at the same time, from the legal standpoint, be careful not to infringe other people's rights. Don't come too close to another well-known brand. So something like, Rodolfo Armani would probably not work very well, because you will get a cease and desist from Armani. And also look at the convergence of the different kinds of markets. Just because there is a brand out there that's used in, say, let's say Apple in technology. It's well known, very, very well known brand. If you wanted to start something else and you want to use a well-known brand, be aware that the laws in different countries treat this differently. But in Singapore, the protection has been extended to well-known brands, especially those which are considered well-known to the market at large. Those, the law protects to a very large extent, even against dilution. So the anti-dilution laws in Singapore. So there's quite a lot of legal rules out there when you're trying to choose brands. Not just that it'll work for you, of course it must work for you, but also not to step on other people's toes. Because other people tend not to be quiet about it. They'll come back and tell you they're stepping on my toes. So all that kind of thing just adds to costs. And it's what I've mentioned, some brands are more easily registrable than others. If they're easily registrable and it carries across markets, it makes it much cheaper to register. The cost, the legal cost and all that is much less. And you get more mileage out of it.
Okay, thank you. I believe there's someone from the floor who wishes to ask a question. Maybe you could go to the... Oh, okay.
How many cities in China?
Oh, in China we're not there yet. Yeah, we only in Indonesia, South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Vietnam, and even the... Okay. Oh, thank you. In fact, right now we are working on one of few of the master franchisee. In fact, we had worked with few of them before, but then I think they decided to withdraw. So I'm fine, fair enough. Yeah. Oh, there are a lot of challenges. I think, especially it's so huge, and then we're exporting the whole concept there. It takes a long time to educate and take a long time to build the brand. So I'm not sure whether it's viable to go to China for our kind of F&B. You know what I'm trying to say? That's my perceptions.